Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ion Canon Podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew, and I'm coming to you from the new Underworld North studio here in Toronto. And as always, I am joined across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm good. I'm coming from the Southern Pacific area of the Ion Can studio, where we are in full solidarity with the actors on strike.
There we go. There we go. We'll get to a bit about the strike in a minute. There you're in Underworld, Orange County. To set up the podcast first, he's tall, he's blue, he can outwit you, outfight you. He will probably outgun you, but if not, there's space wheels involved. This week, as we prepare for his live action debut, we return to the most enduring figure in the paper to screen pipeline, Grand Admiral Thrawn. And to help us out do just that, she came on the flagship a few weeks ago. We thought, oh, we have to get her on the show too. It's Katherine of the Legends Consortium. Thanks for joining on Ion Canon.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Right on. So before we get into it, we get into the plugs. First off, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Ion Canon Pod and Threads at Ion Canon Pod. Here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, we get YouTube memberships and super chats, and of course the Star Wars Underworld Discord. The link in the description. Joel, do we have any events coming up?
Yes. We will hopefully be announcing the winner for our game night this Wednesday, and hopefully this Friday we'll hopefully be having a game night event. So check us out.
There we go. And of course, most importantly, our guest Katherine. We do plugs both at the top and the bottom. Tell us, what is the Legends Consortium? What is Legends Con? We see that wonderful art in the background there of Mara Jade and Revan. Tell us all about Legends Con and the social media as well.
Yeah, so Legends Con is a first-year fan-run convention celebrating the original expanded universe, books, comics, games, etc. That are now defined as Legends. We have a focus on positivity and inclusivity. We will be at the Marriott Convention Center in Burbank, California on September 9th and 10th. Our guest list so far includes Randy Stradley, Matthew Stover, Karina Betchko, Sean Stewart, Barbara Hambly, Abel Pena, and Craig Miller. And we have a couple more exciting guest announcements coming soon. So follow us. We are at Legends_Con on Twitter and Instagram, and at Legends Consortium on Facebook and Tumblr.
Right on. Definitely very appropriate for everything we do here. All things paper Legends, paper canon. It's all good. It's all one. Especially appreciate your focus on positivity and diving in. That's a great guest list. Like, also got to say, and to hear that it's even growing. And like Matt Martin retweeted you guys, and that was great.
Yeah, that was really exciting.
Yeah, fun times. So moving right along. Normally I forget to put in a this week in Star Wars, but this time around, just the last second, I had two. First of all, I mentioned about the writers' strike, and I'll let you guys both to chime in if you want. There's a bit. It's a necessary strike. We're behind them, especially not especially, but including now that the Screen Actors Guild has gotten involved. Hopefully something good is going to come out of this. One also silver lining though is Daniel Jose Older realizing, oh yeah, books, comics, that's not struck. It's easier to make. You're open to make cosplay in celebrating everything going on in the paper space, if you will. And so Daniel Jose Older was all tweeting about how more High Republic cosplay, please do that. Hopefully making the space to have more attention on it. Yes, the attention most importantly needs to be on getting a good deal for writers and for actors and for others who especially those who are earning at the lower end of the scale, getting good benefits for them, but also great stories coming out on paper, and looking forward to that. I don't know if you guys saw this tweet.
A Comic Con about comics.
Who knew? There you go. I don't know if you guys saw this tweet. If you guys have, Katherine, you have any thoughts or feels about the strike overall?
Yeah, I think it's necessary. Totally in support of the unions. with Legends Con, I was one of the people who is part of our board. He works in the Hollywood industry, and we were talking about stuff, and he was saying, yeah, I think this is going to be like the only Southern California convention that's not affected by it, since
True.
everything that we're doing is books, comics, and also it's at least 10 years old, so it's not anything recent promotion. So yeah, I support it.
Yeah, more again, good stories that are still there for us to enjoy. I mean, that's what I keep saying about Legends. They're still there for us to enjoy.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
that's great. Okay, quickly moving on. Yeah, I just had a thought today reading. I've finally started reading Cataclysm finally, and
Hooray!
of course, High Republic Phase 2, and of course, I mean everything in the aftermath of the Battle of Jeddah, and just a thought on the one hand, kind of wondering, so here's a spoiler for Jedi Survivor. Cal goes to Jeddah, and the Jeddah has a major role in that story, and of course, so does the High Republic have a major role in that story and the High Republic era, if you will. I kind of wondered, on the one hand, it would have been cool. I wonder if there was a missed opportunity to have, I don't know, maybe there was a databank entry or something that the playthrough I watched missed, or they completely ignored it. That the Battle of Jeddah it's a big deal in the High Republic era. It's shaping out to be, at least, the kind of seeming to be where the Path of the Open Hand announces itself as this force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. And so I wonder if there's a bit of a missed opportunity to have some sort of reference to the Battle of Jeddah in Jedi Survivor. On the other hand, would that have made the galaxy's too small? Would that have been shoehorning things in? Would that,
Third option, timetables just might not have lined up.
Yeah, well, I wondered about that. When were these things being in development at the same time? Maybe would they have known? Would people have known? Would people making the game have known about the Battle of Jeddah? Could they have gotten a note about it? I don't know, but it seemed like, I don't know. It seemed like there would have been something. Could have been something, even about the statue, about what happened to it, how did it get toppled. That's also more spoilers for High Republic, but hopefully people are either caught up or not too worried about that. I don't know if either of you have any further thoughts. This is just me spewing out into the universe. I don't know.
I'll ask Katherine. Have you kept up with High Republic? I know you're Legends focused, but have you read, how far of High Republic have you read so far?
Yeah, I read through Phase 1, and then I've just been so busy I haven't gotten to Phase 2. But I am really excited about all of the interest in Jeddah, because A, I love Rogue One, and B, because I love Rogue One, the Saber Guild Temple that I helped found in San Diego. So Saber Guild is the lightsaber choreography branch of the major Star Wars costuming organizations. In San Diego, we are actually Jeddah Temple. If you're going to San Diego Comic-Con, you can see us perform at the Masquerade on Saturday night. We will be sort of the halftime show while the judges are out deciding who the winners of the costume contest are. So yeah, I'm happy that people hopefully it will bring Jeddah back, Jeddah the planet back up to the forefront, so that people know what the heck our Saber Guild Temple is named after, because people kind of have forgotten, like general public. But yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm excited to read Phase 2. I'm excited to figure out what happens to that statue. I've been kind of wondering about it since we saw it in Rogue One. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Good. I'm glad I didn't spoil everything. Jeddah, I will say Jeddah, here's a pun incoming. It's definitely getting its time in the sun. Especially on paper canon. Like, I mean, there's an issue of not Charles Soule's comic. I think it was Karen Gillan's Star Wars ongoing comic that features it quite a bit. After Rogue One, of course, but yeah, it's worth exploring a lot more. And I agree. I hope it gets more attention. I don't know, Joel. What do you think of my theory, my thought, at least the Battle of Jeddah and Jedi Survivor, and Also, yeah, High Republic Phase 2. Whereabouts are you in that so far?
Well, I mean, I don't know. My theory is maybe the production timeline didn't match up. I mean, that game's been
Mhm.
probably in development a lot longer than the books have been going.
True.
They probably knew of a thing called the High Republic, but I don't know how much detail they could have gotten or whatnot.
Right.
The Nile themselves aren't even mentioned in the cutscenes, just spaceships.
I think in a data bank there's this one little thing about um, Grand Enemy and then brackets the Nile. So,
Okay,
yeah.
there you go.
All right. Moving along then. We can have an eyes on screen. Can have an eyes on screen segment CN. Because yeah, there was something dropped this past week, and we're gonna join the podcast Terry out about that. Yeah, the Ahsoka trailer just dropped. Yeah, what sometime this week. Forget what day it was. They all merged together. Yeah, Catherine, I'll throw this first question to you. Uh, you know, what did you think? I mean, I've asked this before you hit air. Uh, what did you think of seeing Thrawn live action?
Yeah, it's I feel like it's been a long time coming. And it's interesting to see this interpretation. Every iteration of him looks different and is a little bit different between paper and animation. So it'll be interesting to see what this take on him is in live action.
And we'll definitely get to a bit more of a speculation about what that might be, what we hope that'll be at the end of the show, because we're talking
It's
about the
funny
blue
you
guy.
said that because you said we got. If you look at our thumbnails, like we got one of them pre
Yeah.
Lars Mikkelsen Thrawn pictures at one side. So it's like, yeah, there's one image right there from like early 2000s.
The John Mayer Thrawn, like the John Mayer Thrawn. There you go. Yeah, Joel. First off, or sorry, Catherine, I'll throw this to you.
Yeah.
Overall thoughts and feels about the trailer.
It definitely pulled me in. I had some reservations about the show, and watching the trailer, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be really really interesting. I saw a lot more of Sabine than I expected, which is not a bad thing. That's a good bonus.
Yeah. What kinds of reservations did you have, and how did they how the trailer address that? You think?
It's just we never really heard the end of the story on the allegations against Rosario Dawson. And so I was just kind of feeling like, I don't know, like I might just skip it. But yeah, I still have some mixed feelings about that. But separate from that, like the trailer itself looks really good.
Yeah, and those are fair. Again,
yeah,
some ambiguities there. I'll say when it comes to the trailer, my main thought is, we've talked about it being the show being Rebels season 5 or Clone Wars season 40 or whatever, and I come away with it feeling, no, this is just Ahsoka, her story at this point in time, and not worrying about what it's connected to necessarily, especially because again, yeah, you talk about Sabine and how there was this whole untold story about with Sabine being trained by Ahsoka, maybe. So, and then of course, all of our experiences in the past from Clone Wars and Rebels, that time period, I should say, who you are at 18, who you are at, whatever, 27, 28, 26, however old she is, versus who you are at 40 something, you're gonna be a different person. But also those memories stick with you, and so I really appreciate the way it communicated. That she's, she's a fully fleshed out character, one of the most fully fleshed out. I mean, this is her second series she's getting for herself, so definitely deserves it. I will, yeah, I feel like it will reward those of us who've actually stuck with it and watched Clone Wars and Rebels together. Of course, Ashley Eckstein saying, hey, if you want to know what's going on here, watch Clone Wars, watch Rebels as well. All the work that she laid down, yeah, it's going to be, hopefully have a part to play, without, of course, the classic problem of not alienating people who haven't watched these things. Joel, what did you think of the trailer? What thought? You have a bunch of thoughts.
Oh yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's just Filoni's just continuing this saga he started on in 2008 with the Clone Wars film, and just moved it to the Rebel series, and now he moved it to a live action series, and gonna probably culminate in a movie. We hope. So that was cool. Very Sabine focused, as everyone has seemed to notice. I do think if this show is going to be Ahsoka and Sabine in a lot of ways. I think they're very much at the heart of all this. Got to see the New Republic fleet, and it looks awesome. Around Coruscant, that looks like Coruscant. I'm going to assume. Mom Mothma looking fine, in her fancy hair and her Chancellor regalia. That looks epic. And yeah, I'm very curious what are the machinations of our villains and whatnot. We'll get to that as we get soon, because it's all very interesting. And I think you're right not to get too speculative of like, oh, is Barris showing up because we're going to continue that story plot, or I do think in some ways it will be, we'll see Ahsoka and her many adventures sort of all catching up to her in like a mental space, but not specifically. And now here's Barris, because we're finally continuing that. Here's Lux, because we're going to continue that plot thread. I don't expect that, but yeah, very exciting to just kind of see this epic story just kind of continue and where it all goes at the end. So I'm very excited for this, and this is gonna be kind of hype for the movie. If we all come out not liking Ahsoka, they're sort of like, oh well, Filoni film's now kind of deflated for me. But if we all come out liking it, it's like, oh yeah, like Filoni film, let's go.
Is Bob Iger gonna cut it? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Hopefully he gets the right lessons from all this. Yeah, the Anakin name drop
twice.
That was twice, which is a big deal. And how those Darksiders, the creamsicle Jedi, he knows Anakin, and he knows she was Anakin's Padawan. So yeah.
Rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. By the way.
Yes.
Last performance.
I feel like I had something else to say about this, but I don't know. It slipped my mind. So that kind of happens. Overall, definitely looking forward to it. I will say one thing I was worried about with Uncanny Plateau. Now I realize I'm still gonna have. So I'm past it with Ahsoka, Thrawn. I think we're not sure about Hera and Sabine. I'll give my take, and then I guess you guys can. We can have this longer discussion too. We got time. The question about Uncanny Plateau and the transition. The way is what I mean by that is the transition from animation to live action. Uncanny Valley. And I was all okay. This is not Mary Elizabeth Winstead playing Vanessa Marshall playing Hera. It sounds strange, sounds different, but I gotta get over it because it's not. Yeah, paraphrase Alden Ehrenreich. It's not Mary Elizabeth Winstead playing Vanessa Marshall playing Hera. It's Mary Elizabeth Winstead playing Hera, and bringing what she brings to the character at her place in this timeline, what she's experienced already through the war, in this time period. So she's going to be different as well, and it's a different actor bringing a different take a little bit. So for me to be just open to what she brings. Also, that's what I was going to say. Mon Mothma as the Chancellor. I forgot about that, even though, of course, that's Chuck Wendig telling us that. But Katherine, it's the wider question. I know. From what we were talking about beforehand, kind of a bit of mixed reaction here. Where are you in terms of Uncanny Plateau, in just the overall, in terms of that transition from, even with the whole Mandoverse and transitions from animation to live action?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the way that Thrawn looks in the trailer is definitely Uncanny Valley. But what I will say is that of all the characters to look Uncanny Valley, he's a good one to be in that range. He should be a little bit like that. It's kind of like with Rogue One when they did CGI Tarkin. There was definitely, they had some technical difficulties with it. It wasn't the best. But also, if Tarkin looks a little bit uncanny, it's like, yeah, it's that tracks. So yeah, I'm not gonna ride too hard against it because it is certainly a transition.
Yeah.
It's sort of funny you guys talk about Uncanny Valley for Thrawn. Because I feel like I kind of had a little bit, I didn't have that much, but I felt like I had a little bit of that in Rebels. Because I was so used to Matthew Stover's voice for Thrawn.
Huh.
And then Lars Mikkelsen does a very different thing. And it's like, I hear it, but it's not Matthew, not Matthew Stover, not Matthew Stover, I'm sorry. Wait,
Mark
Mark
Thompson.
Mark Thompson, I'm sorry, I got mixed up. Mark Thompson's voice, who who I have associated with Thrawn for such a long time. I don't know, Catherine, if you ever listened. I'm sure you listened to the OG, Mark Thompson, Thrawn trilogy audiobooks. I was so used to that version of Thrawn that it's like when Lars Mikkelsen comes and does this thing, I'm like, I mean, I got over it really quick, and I've embraced it now. But it's sort of like, oh yeah, this is not Mark Thompson doing the Thrawn voice anymore, because that was the only voice for Thrawn I ever knew. This is sort of this is. I kind of had my uncanny plateau with Thrawn already, so like at this point, I'm just like, I'm happy to get to see him. So
Lars Mikkelsen again. What does he sound like in those audiobooks? I've never heard those ones. Because I know, the Canon Thrawn, Mark Thompson does Lars Mikkelsen perfectly.
Less of an accent, a lot like kind of that cold, but a lot more deeper and a lot more just forward. While Lars Mikkelsen has very whispery, Mark Thompson does a little bit more of a boom to the Thrawn, a little bit more oomph.
Yeah.
I'll send you a link to some audio of Thrawn to listen to later, Matthew, to kind of get an idea. But it doesn't have that kind of Lars Mikkelsen kind of to it.
It's still sort of a European-esque.
Yeah,
yeah.
He's going for that, that very imperial, but it's a lot more deeper and kind of boomier.
Sure.
But and I the best shot of Thrawn in there. I'm sure there's probably better shots.
Yeah.
Once you kind of get them just to see a full scene of Thrawn, I'm sure it will probably look better with different angles.
Yeah.
I had the thought I should just
out like this.
Yeah. Well, I thought I should just stare at the screen, just stare at it for a bit, and maybe I'll get there. I don't know. It looks like too much blue paint. I don't know, but it's hard to make like humans aren't blue. Lars Mikkelsen isn't actually blue; he's white. So.
And just from doing a Hera costume, when you apply, like when you totally change the color of your face like that, all of your facial features wash out, and you have to like redraw them on basically with contour. It's a very I'm assuming that they did that with practical makeup mostly rather than CGI as an after effect. But yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. That's true. I didn't know that. So learn something new every day, right? Thanks for teaching us that. Something to look out for then, for even for Ahsoka, right? I gather
he's orange.
Yeah, she's orange, right? That's not Rosario Dawson's skin color. So
I mean, I'll give Ahsoka this. It is probably ambitious of like so many alien leads, and so many of our shows so far have all been human leads.
True.
Yeah, and that's been something that's kind of disappointed me with Disney Plus shows so far as a whole, is that we don't see a lot of aliens. So yeah, having both Thrawn and Ahsoka in this one, they're certainly raising the bar.
And Hera.
And Hera, yes.
Yeah.
How can I forget Hera, my girl?
Yeah. I'm literally looking forward to it. I mean, it's only, what day is it today? It's the 17th. So I'll just over a month away. It's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be fun. Well, yeah. For some reason we keep on having things to say about this show, so I can foresee Eyes on Screen being a longer segment than usual. But that's because it's Space Wizards and Senators. And everything we love here at the Iron Cannon podcast. All right. Speaking of the blue guy, which we've talked about plenty, but this not this blue guy, Markian, this blue guy back here, Thrawn. Joel, give us the legacy of Thrawn. Where's this thing?
You mentioned Markian, and I'm like, I'm waiting for the day Matthew has to deal with the uncanny plateau of marking
Oh
on
no!
live action screen.
Don't do that to me. Although, I mean, we don't have a voice. We don't have a voice actor. I mean, I guess we do. We have Mark Thompson.
Yeah, Mark Thompson
But
again.
yeah, but we don't have like he doesn't. He hasn't
An
been
actor.
animated. Yeah, he hasn't been
Or live
animated
action.
yet. So
If he
yeah.
or you be on live action first, you never know. You
I
don't know
mean,
what's gonna happen.
who knows what Leslie Hudlin's going to do at this point? Anyway,
Right,
take it
right.
away.
But the other blue guy, the
That
P
blue
blue, double D double die, double D double die, double D double die. Yes, Thrawn. Oh wow. So we were talking about Thrawn in Uncanny Plateau and not, but is it not amazing that again this character from a tie-in novel made in 1991, now what 30, 40? No, that's not 30 years later. It's gonna be the main big bad of a live-action Disney Plus series and possibly a movie. It blew my mind. It's like that is the journey. That is something that I don't think anyone back then ever has considered when they were making this. So, Catherine, I'm going to throw it to you. When was your introduction to Thrawn as a character? What book was it? If it's the traditional answer of Heir of the Empire, feel free. But I'm curious, like, when was your Thrawn introduction?
Yeah, it was absolutely Heir to the Empire. That was probably one of the first Star Wars books that I read. It definitely wasn't like within the first 10 or so, but it was, somewhere shortly after that. And I usually am not a big fan of the villains. And I found Thrawn really interesting just because he makes the protagonists work harder than most. So I've always found him really interesting.
Same Heir of the Empire. Remember that was in my school library. I was so young and had no idea what canon was. I didn't know that this was a post-Endor series. I was just waiting for Darth Vader to show up. So I'm like, where's Darth Vader?
Lady Vader, all that stuff happens.
Yes, Malari.
That's true.
Yeah.
Waiting for that. Like, I see Vader, but I don't see Vader. What's going on? Matthew, I'm going to toss it to you because I'm curious. What was your first introduction to Thrawn? Like, how did you get introduced to the character?
Which celebration was that? The one where he shows up on screen. No, I mean, he being in the zeitgeist. You know Star Wars. You know who this guy is, but I mean, I hadn't read any of Heir to the Empire or anything. But even then, I forget would have been Orlando or Chicago or London, whatever. Yeah, that celebration, and just the trailer and the organ, and then the this whole office scene and everything. Even I got excited by myself in my living room, watching the live stream. Having not read or the Empire, having not engaged with the EU all that much, but again, having a sense of how important he was to everyone and to what it meant for, and I think we'll get into this in a bit, what it meant for a character beloved in Legends to make the leap into canon. Obviously, so what I did immediately then was I had the graphic novel version, or bought the graphic novel version of Heir to the Empire, or of the whole trilogy, and just read that all the way through. I got that on digital, so I'm guessing it's impossible to find in print, but got that on digital.
Expensive.
And or expensive. So read all the way through so I can have a sense of what the story is. And like I said, definitely struck by the way he's a different kind of foil. Again, we'll get into this too. A different kind of foil for Luke, Han, and Leia. But then, I mean, my main dive in was, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, was Rebels, and was the Zahn novel, the Canon Zahn novel. I guess it was 2017. And so, I mean, navigating this, the big question that we bring up in this podcast all the time: Thrawn as villain, Thrawn as protagonist, or something. Having those parallel tracks running side by side, and having this paper story be woven into a screen story, and he's kind of this proxy for all these conversations that we keep having a little bit. He's not a proxy, he's a instantiation of those things. And so Yeah, my initial impression. I mean, I hear the organ now. It's Kevin Kiner having that very slow, quiet,
Mhm.
foreboding um, man in charge, or person in charge, leader in charge, who leads not from out of fear but out of respect, and just um, the guy who can figure things out. So, uh, yeah, more impressed by him, more impressed than Palpatine, I would say.
Yeah, I mean that is something I think Thrawn kind of had to be. Is like, if the books were very much marketed, here's the continuing adventures of Luke, Han, and Leia. It's like, well, okay, well, how do you make the villain scary
Right.
after the Emperor? It's like, well, Luke was like, well, I'm done with the saga. Gotta deal with my family issues
The
now.
George Lucas impression shows up. There we go.
I love that's my George impression. Me, Steven, gotta deal with some stuff, and better make Temple deal and get our anger out. Okay, write some books, whatever. I'm George. It's like you gotta, make a villain that is, after the Emperor. It's like that is the impossible task.
Mhm.
Like even Don Black was like, yeah, that's just Emperor's back. I love Dark Empire, so my favorite comic of all time. But it's like, so how do you do that? And Thrawn much of did catch the zeitgeist and stuck, compared to a lot of the other. I mean, I'm sure there are great Legends villains too. I'm sure Catherine can name many of them, but Thrawn definitely up there for sure. In terms of like even where like the most casual, I think Legends fan knows something about Thrawn. So yeah, let's just go there. Catherine, you talked a little about, Thrawn makes the villain, not makes the heroes work. What impressed you about Thrawn as an antagonist in that first book, and what has made you stick with the character for as long as you have, or as he's gone
Yeah.
on and evolved?
Yeah. I mean, it's I really respect the choice of Timothy Zahn to come up with something different rather than just being like, knock knock, it's the Sith again. Um, or so it's a very different type of villain. Like you can't just solve it with blowing up the Death Star. Like, you could assassinate him maybe if you're clever enough with it.
Right.
But his power really comes from not any kind of military strength necessarily or power in the Force, but just his own cleverness, evil Sherlock Holmes kind of thing going on. Like, um, yeah, I find him really interesting. I it has been really interesting watching him go from villain to now he's kind of in more anti-hero territory, and just how his character has changed over time and the different versions of him, both within Legends and within Rebels and within the new Canon Thrawn novels.
Mhm.
It'll be interesting to see where he falls on the scale of ruthless, in the Ahsoka show. I always kind of wondered about with Rebels if they had to kind of tone it down a little bit since it is targeted at children as one of the main audiences.
I'll answer that question for you. There's one scene
Yeah,
where Thrawn literally blows up a guy. He makes the guy sit on a faulty speeder bike, and he blows him up quite literally, helmet on the ground. I
yeah.
mean, there's no blood, but it's like
Yeah.
Thrawn just blew up that guy. He's dead.
Well, I think like what to me, so one of the things that I was kind of expecting in Rebels, was because I think we'll probably talk about this more later, but like something that's very important to Thrawn in Legends is his death. And the imagery of the blood on his white uniform, and like he looks down on it and says like, oh, it was so artistically done. I was like, yeah, I expected him to die in Rebels. Probably
I
was
would.
a good choice to not have him die in Rebels so that you can use him for other things, so that we don't have another Darth Maul scenario where they killed off a really cool bad guy way too soon. But I'd expected that since Sabine had the dark saber, and Sabine being an artist and one of Thrawn's things being, very art driven as a culture of like way of cultural touchstone. I'd kind of thought that Sabine was going to stab him with the dark saber, so we had that like another like stark contrast that's a little bit more Disney XD friendly than blood on his tunic. But
I mean, she still might.
she still might.
You never
might.
know. Or I guess Bo-Katan would.
Yeah,
yeah,
she doesn't have the dark saber anymore, but
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I mean, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about speculations and adaptions, which is always something we talk about later. But yeah, I'll throw it to Magic. Magic, we've debated and discussed a lot about kind of the somewhat the idea of the two Thrawns.
Yeah.
You have kind of the rebels, Filoni Thrawn, a lot more ruthless, a lot more callous, a lot more. I'm gonna just okay. Well, I'm gonna just bombard Lothal now. Civilians be danged. And then you kind of have the Timothy Zahn more anti-hero, where it's like, oh no, actually that one battle, that was Price's fault why the civilians got all destroyed and whatnot. So I guess for you, you've sort of where have you come down as sort of like Thrawn as the villain, and because you come in a lot later
Yeah.
in this, where Tim Zahn has sort of decided, I am going to make Thrawn kind of more that anti-hero defender of the Chiss and whatnot
Like
character.
a more sympathetic, more relatable character. I mean, I will say from my sense of it is Thrawn and Rebels is closer to Thrawn in the Heir to the Empire trilogy because he's the villain against these rebels and a different kind, especially coming in at season 3 on the heels of this confrontation with Vader. Right. Just in Twilight the Apprentice. The next episode after that, I think, is Thrawn's first appearance on screen, and so the guy in charge, the guy who, well, this is the commonality. Here's the commonality is between Thrawn in Rebels and Thrawn in paper canon, both trilogies. He's the guy in charge. He's the guy, like I was saying before, he's the guy who can always figure it out. He's always a few steps ahead. He always knows what's happening. Very cool and calm. You might as well. He could have pointy ears and go through Kolinar. I mean,
evil Spock.
Kind of the evil Spock thing. I mean the kind of like a Vulcan who kind of goes selfish a little bit, but
so wrong.
I mean, well, wrong, but more logical.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I said before, I'm finding it works so much better as a villain. He works so much better because your protagonist is in a way a self-insert. And I guess I'm sure some people really do relate to him in the canon stories and connect to him. I'm finding I'm relating to everyone else around. I mean, from Vento to Arlani to Thalius. Especially Thalius. I think in isn't Greater Good, Lesser Evil. I had to stop about halfway through Lesser Evil. This is the last of the Ascendancy trilogy, just because Phase 2 started. But there's another friend he meets, and just characters that are more emotional and more. I don't know. It's hard to describe, just because I know there are certain folks who maybe. I mean, I wonder. Here's one I'm curious about, and hopefully I word this the right way. I wonder if folks who are maybe more neurodivergent relate to him a little more, because those who struggle with expressing emotions and processing emotions, and it's everyone around them have to kind of interpret for them. I do wonder about that, but at the same time, I mean, I'm a little neurodivergent myself, but expressing and conversing, I guess more kind of neurotypical ways I connect to better, and so. And I mean that is a whole area of discussion. I just find, I mean that's the thing that I talked about. Using the label Thrawn in these stories, it's really it's a marketing term. It's these are really Vanto stories and Naralani stories and Thalia stories. and cheery stories, that Thrawn is kind of this thing in the center. Then we kind of Agatha Christie-esque, finally has the answer at the end. I mean, we make the parallel with Sherlock, right? Who has the answer in the end?
I
But
mean, even modern interpretations of Sherlock have sort of played on the idea he's neurodivergent.
yeah, it's true. But also, the other guy, Watson, is
Right.
often the more relatable to more people. So yeah, but I mean that's also in a way, if they really move, I don't know how they would for a villain. That's the problem. How they'd move forward with making something about neurodivergence. I don't think that would be the best choice for a villain to do that. They'd have to get a hero to do that. But yeah,
Well,
it's interesting. I don't know. Like I think that's the thing. I think Thrawn in Ahsoka. Again, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but I mean, yeah, I'll say this: Thrawn and Rebels mostly more compelling. The one thing I think a lot of people have criticized is he kept delaying the final sort of what. Yeah, it says, okay, we'll let them get away this time so we can study them. We'll let them get away this time so we can study them. I think that went on a little too long as well. So they had to stretch it out 2 seasons. I like that he went 2 seasons. I like that they didn't off him in the first one. But Katherine, your idea then about Sabine, again, it could still happen. That is fascinating. But
I kind of hope, honestly, if you're at it, I mean, I don't want to get. I'll save it for later. I have someone who I think should do the killing blow. But Katherine, I'll move it to you. What have your thoughts been about kind of, and from the Legends perspective, kind of seeing Thrawn evolve into that sort of more anti-hero kind of, there's more going on to him than just, I'm an Imperial who wants to restore the Empire for glory and Palpatine kind of thing, in from the Legend perspective, like with the Thrawn duology, a little bit of Choices of One, a little bit in Outbound Flight. I don't know how many of those books you've gotten to. What have your thoughts on that have been, as from the Legends perspective, and sort of watching that evolution unfold?
Yeah, so I've read all of the Legends books that have Thrawn in them. I actually have not read any of the new canon trilogy with Thrawn, just because I haven't had time. Like, it's been on my list forever and I just haven't gotten to it. So everything for me with Thrawn within the new era of canon has been from Rebels, as far as I know of him. And I prefer him as just a straight up villain. And that's like, this is just me personally. Something that kind of I didn't like as much about the sequel trilogy was really that they were trying too much, in my opinion, to humanize the fascists, basically. Like Kylo and Hux and everything, trying to make them a little bit more sympathetic. And I don't know. I prefer it when the evil empire is, like, just let the bad guys be bad guys. And something that's always struck me, I think it was the first time reading through it, was I believe it's Heir to the Empire. It might be one of the later books. But Thrawn is on the bridge and somebody makes a mistake with something. And he just kills the guy right there and then.
Yep.
And is basically just kind of like, let this be a lesson to everybody of don't make mistakes. And to me, that, it's similar to Vader, choking out every Imperial he comes across, basically. Except for some reason, it's a little bit scarier because he's not using some magical power. He's just another guy, and he will mess you up if you let him down.
He had Rook chop off the guy's head.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pleasant.
That was Heir of the Empire. So yeah, that was his first appearance.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes. Right. That is the first time we see him, is just killing an underling. Just goodbye, gone.
Sure sets the tone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
it really does.
It really does. And I think what's interesting, Matthew, you've sort of come in with kind of Zahn late stage Thrawn riding Thrawn. Like you see the evolution in Legends, and in a lot of ways, Tim Zahn is just really just kind of continuing where he left off
Right.
now with the just ascendancy stuff. But kind of interesting that you kind of have those perspectives. You kind of came out of it late.
Yeah.
Well, me and Catherine very much came at it kind of with the OG.
And yet,
Uh,
I kind of agree with Catherine, right? I think
Yeah.
like I was saying, it works better. He works better as a villain because it's how do we defeat this guy? He actually has everything figured out. With Palpatine, it's you just his arrogance and his hubris is just gonna create the holes that Anakin comes back and right there, right under his nose. Thrawn, nothing escapes him. Nothing gets under his nose. So what do? And in canon, he hasn't been beaten yet. It's only, interestingly, the only thing that has been able to confound him, and that's that's a good word for it. I think.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to the Bendu and the Purgil. These larger than life aspects, and rooted in the Force that
Mhm.
are able to confound him because it's beyond anything he can calculate or predict, which is interesting. Than you have in especially in the Ascendancy trilogy, but also in I think in oh goodness, why am I blanking on this? Alliances. Well, yeah, uh, the everything with the Skywalkers and how they use the Force. So again, a bit of a spoiler. They use the Force to navigate the unknown regions, and they're kind of. Maybe that is a thematic point. Just thinking about this now, right? Thrawn's only encounter with the Force is as a tool for the Ascendancy fleet.
Mhm.
If we're saying, and we've been back and forth in this for the last year and a half, the Thrawn in Rebels is the Thrawn who we read about in the Ascendancy trilogy. When he's trying to shoot down the Bendu, he's trying to shoot down this thing that confounds even his experience of just this tool for the Ascendancy fleet that is clearly so much far further beyond it.
Mhm.
Yes, in Lesser Evil, or was it in the second one, Greater Good? There's a species of refugees that are more Force sensitive, and
Well, it.
yeah, and so it'll be interesting again. It's perfect time. I know we keep talking about this, keep bringing this up for him to be the big bad in a series about a Jedi, or at least a former Jedi who does actually tap into things that are larger than life in the world between worlds and
Mhm.
whatnot. And even with Ezra, I'm talking about Ahsoka, but also with Ezra and the Purgil, I find again, this is why I'm like, are they seeding some sort of conversion for Thrawn? And that's the only reason I wonder about this, is because I keep thinking about this and kind of staying there is what happens when he's confronted by this thing that's bigger than himself? What happens when he's at the mercy of it? He can't outthink and he can't outwit it because there's these giant space whales. How do you predict a bunch of giant space whales coming in and tapping into the Force to go to hyperspace? You
I
can't,
mean,
you know.
if you ask me, I say if you want to get an idea of how Thrawn is going to react,
Yeah.
just watch every single Indiana Jones movie and what happens to those bad guys.
That's possible too. They just crash and collapse. But yeah.
You bring up Tool, and I think that's interesting because going back to the OG Thrawn trilogy, that's the reason why he gets Jorus Sabayoth in the first place. He needs a Dark Jedi because Dark Jedi has battle meditation powers. Hey, I need battle meditation powers to coordinate my troops for my big plan. Can you help me out here? I'll steal some babies for you. George Sabath's like, all right, Jedi babies. And then he just starts getting crazier, and then someone's like, oh, I had to get this crazy guy in my spaceship. Oh, Lord help us. So, there's that and the cloning tech. But yeah, he very much is like, all right, George, you're a tool. Use the Force like a tool for my plan. And We mentioned the Emperor. I do think if Thrawn has that weakness, it is the weakness of almost every Star Wars villain to some extent. Arrogance. Thrawn is arrogant to a certain extent. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else, and sometimes it is deserved. He is pretty smart,
Mhm.
but he looked at the Nogri and thought, they're idiots. I'm gonna rule them forever. There's no way they're gonna turn on me. And then
That worked out
one
so well
does,
for him.
and that
It
then
worked out so artistically for him.
artistically done. He kind of sees Pelion a little bit like, oh, you're just a human. I have smart chiss brain. You have a dummy human brain. Kind of reverse xenophobia in terms because the Empire is all about anti-aliens, but here's Thrawn's like, my alien species better than all of you, and I'm in charge. So, he's not full on cackling mad, but he's certainly got the typical
Hmm.
imperial arrogance that all Imperials do, and kind of
True.
even the
It's
chess
true.
is
It is. It
very
is a form of
artistic.
arrogance. You're right. In just being able to the presumption that you can strategize
Control.
your way out of anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And he never doesn't really get the Force in any way. But Catherine, I'll turn to you. What are your kind of impressions about Thrawn? What grad about Thrawn like as weaknesses as a villain, especially as a non-Force user villain who still has to deal with a universe of magic? As I like to jokingly say, Thrawn is a sci-fi Star Trek villain who ended up in a fairy tale universe where my friends are my power, magic, it works.
Yeah. Now that you say that, like if you brought Thrawn and Khan together, there'd be problems. There'd be a lot of problems. But yeah, it is the power of friendship is like his main weakness, which having not read the new canon Thrawn trilogy, because it seems like he's very close to Eli Vanto in that, like closer than he was to Pelion. Which, just as a side note, I was so pumped to see Pelion come in on The Mandalorian. I was watching it. Yeah, I was watching it with people who are not really into the books and stuff like that. So like, you see that character, and I was kind of like, oh, that kind of looks like Pelion of like that one Imperial guy. And then like as things started going forward, I was like, wait, maybe that is Pelion. And then like they said it, and I was like, ah! And my friends were like, why is this exciting?
I was
There's
like,
your moment there.
my
Yeah,
God. It's like a Valhalla moment for me. It's like, oh,
yeah.
But yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But it seems like the new Thrawn am I correct that he should be able to understand the power of friendship, since he is he friends with Eli more than he was with Pelion, or is Eli still kind of his underling tool?
I do feel like at least the way the books portray it, he's definitely molding. He definitely sees Eli as like somewhat worthy, somewhat of a protege to send off into the unknown regions and help out the Chiss. Matthew, you could probably speak to his relationship with Aralani. Like, do they have a thing? Do they not have a thing?
As close as you can get, as close as I think Thrawn could ever get to that. No, I wouldn't ship them. I'd ship Thalius a little bit. I think Thalius is a bit of a crush, actually. But that's, so just as an aside, one of the things I think I've said this on the show before, Thalius' growth in through the Ascendancy trilogy to actually asserting herself and taking on a more confident role, the experience of being a caregiver or being a Skywalker and then a caregiver, and the importance of that. Thrawn, yeah, that is interesting, Catherine. You bring up, that he is more able to. There are more people around him he can rely on, right? And the less obvious people, right? People that the Ascendancy hierarchy or the expansion defense fleet hierarchy are all like, why do we? I mean, yes, we understand why Skywalkers are so important, but are we going to actually ask them for their opinion? No. And he goes ahead and asks Cheery, I think, for her opinion. She's an 8-year-old girl, an 8-year-old kid, and Thales, the caregiver. So Yeah, I mean, there is that more. I wonder if that's meant to counterbalance. Maybe this is what it is. Um, yeah. Again, I'm interrupting myself, but uh, in the Ascendancy trilogy, it makes more sense that he's able to rely on the people around him more because that's. I mean, there are these this there's this kid and this caregiver on board that have more insight and more wisdom because the Force is more of a wisdom. Of course, Thalius again being a former caregiver, and people are just more willing to come around him and befriend him, and that's what we see in I forget his name, but another myth
Yeah.
who's kind of
Well,
helping him, myth diplomat. I think who's helping him out in Lesser Evil. But yeah, in the Empire, then he's very isolated. He's very much has to figure this out on his own, and so he does learn to figure it out on his own, and that's uh, maybe that leads him to a more villainous route, and maybe that is. I'm just hitting on it now. Finally, oh, that is very Star Wars, actually.
yeah.
That the people who, when you can bring people around you and you can connect with them, that is saving what we love, um, versus, well, there's no one around, not killing what we hate, but just not caring and being apathetic. um, yeah, with Vanto, to answer the question, yeah, Vanto, he does find someone in Vanto who he can actually reach out to. They're both outsiders, and I think that's another key thing, is that you know Vanto is human, but he's human from the wrong part of the galaxy. Right? He's uh yeah, he has the southern drawl, and he speaks this other weird language, and he doesn't have the crisp Coruscant accent, and so he also has an uphill battle in the Empire, um and is able then to get out and go to the Ascendancy. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's just it. But Vento's gone by this point, and Vento. I mean, I'll be more shocked. I mean, Pelion I was kind of expecting because we got the name drop in Rebels, but also that was just a fleeting moment to actually see him on screen. Like, I get that. I'm here for that. The excitement there, but yeah, I mean, Vento. Are we going to see Vento on screen? I doubt that. So, um, yeah, but again, on screen he's the isolated villain, and he's also surrounded by dum dums like oh, what's his name,
The
the
other
one
Admiral,
the
Admiral Constantine,
Constantine, yeah, the one who breaks formation, all that guy, surrounded by
and
dum
Governor
dums,
Price, and
and
Governor
Governor
Price.
Price, who is smart, but she's not making any friends either, literally not making friends. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good question. Like what could, I mean, here's again, I'd gone away from this question. I'm like, no, he's gonna be a villain. Give me a villain. What if Ezra reaches out to him? What if? You never know. I doubt it again, but what if? Because it's Ezra's personality. It's Ezra's thing to reach out to
Yeah.
people, reach out to animals or creatures, like the Purgle, like the Minox, to reach out to folks who are different. So you never know.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Thrawn, at best, he treats you with mild respect. Like, he ain't gonna
Yeah,
kick you just for the fun of it. Like, he's not a sadistic, that sadistic.
yeah,
But even with Pelion, he very much, there's sort of oh, you're still the junior officer. I just follow my lead. Like,
yeah.
obviously he'll let Pelion give it a suggestion. He's not gonna kill him for it.
Mhm.
Because his own ego is not need to be bruised, but there's always a little bit of that arrogance still of like, I'm still smarter than you, Pelion, in every way, and here's why you're wrong.
Yeah.
I will say one more thing. He won't, in canon, he won't off someone for making a mistake. Um, he'll off someone for continuing to make a mistake and being arrogant and thinking they're right, and not trying to find a way to fix it or improve or whatever. I
Yeah.
think that does happen. But yeah, that is an interesting difference, that setting the tone. Yeah, even as a villain, he won't do that. I mean, the worst he'll do is scream in your face for not understanding art in the Calicori. But yeah, I don't know. It's seeing what he's being set up for.
Yeah, I mean that will be. I'm very. Obviously, I'm going to check out all my, my weaknesses for Thrawn. Yeah, I guess we can go into the Ahsoka's thing now. That is sort of my very much curious thing about, Thrawn right now is like, uh, I think the best mastery we can hope for is sort of maybe like Thrawn's goals feel altruistic, but clearly they're not going to be. Or at least his methods aren't. It's like he might say, "Oh, there are lots of dangers out there in the unknown regions, and the New Republic is democracy and weak, so Empire's better. Authoritarianism for the win." Um, I mean, that's why he started with the Empire in the first place. When Zahn kind of added kind of the somewhat retcon of like his wider goals is like, I need to side with the greater power. I think New Republican democracies are stupid. So I'd rather have a authoritarian government. Probably Thrawn in his most villainous, like under me, because I'm Thrawn and I'm smarter. So who better to run the galaxy but yours truly? That Mon Mothma and a bunch of squabbling, greedy delegates, to quote the Emperor. That is sort of my view of like, even at his best, Thrawn is still an authoritarian. Um, but since Catherine, I'll turn it to you. I guess in terms of expectations and kind of what you're looking for, or just kind of what your vibe is. Obviously you're not going to page for page adapt Heir of the Empire, but you can kind of tell already that this is somewhat of an adaptation if we just take the most loosest form of it's post Endor and Thrawn's going to be the big bad and he's going to do something evil. But what do you think Thrawn is going to do? What do you think his plan is? Do you think it's just going to be simple bunch of Star Destroyers and a go? Do you think he's studying the Force? What kind of is your vibe right now? What are you feeling?
I hope whatever it is, it's unexpected. I think that I really hope it's not that the plan is a bunch of Star Destroyers. Like So something that, and I don't know if this is still true within the newer Thrawn novels, because this was years ago that Timothy Zahn said this on a panel, but he said that he makes it a point of never writing from Thrawn's perspective because Thrawn is smarter than him. Which
that makes sense.
Yeah. And I don't does that continue with the new Thrawn novels? Things that
that's kind of what I'm getting at with. Okay, we get so much the insert characters or everyone around him. So
even in the original Heir of the Empire, Matthew, it's all the Thrawn scenes are from Pelion's perspective. We're watching kind of him view. We're kind of watching. He doesn't really have much of an arc. It's not like at the end he's like, "Oh my god, the Empire's evil," but just more like he's an officer who saw Endor fall, and he's kind of like, "Oh, the Empire's such an estate." And then near the end, he's like, "Thrawn's gonna do it. He's gonna bring us back." And then Thrawn's dead, and he's just like, "Oh no!"
His Messiah has been crucified. Sorry,
Hey, if he went Pelion, exactly. But no, go ahead, Catherine.
I mean, I think I want to see. I want what he's planning to be something that is worthy of him, and I want to see him fail. Like that. I think that those are like the main. Those are the main key parts of Thrawn to me, is that there has to be a like Greek mythology level of just epic failure brought on by like it. I think it's really important in Legends that it is Rook who kills him, as like for people who aren't familiar with it, like there's this whole backstory of how the Empire has been oppressing that species under false pretenses of saving them, and when it all comes out that things are not what they were told, this is retribution for crimes of the Empire as a whole that is brought down upon Thrawn by Rook, and I really want to see it as a character, probably not Rook again, just be like, they did bring him in, but like, they don't have time to go into all of that. But I do really want it to be somebody who doesn't have a lot of power be the one to finally end him, because it does have to come from, I think it's important that his death come from someone that he doesn't respect.
Well, no. See, you said he doesn't have respect, and I'm like, see, the person I kind of want to do it, but I think he kind of does have respect for her in a little bit, is Hera. Only because in Rebels, Hera and Thrawn were kind of the closest things to arch enemies.
Yeah.
Like, like Thrawn didn't really have much of a repertoire. Was
The first time we hear Thrawn, at least in the trailer, Grand Admiral Thrawn is from Hera.
Right. And, Hera's sort of the first rebel he meets. Meets her twice. He steals her Kalikori. Doesn't really have much of a repertoire with Ezra until the very end. He knows of Sabine. He likes her art. He, didn't really know Kaden. Probably doesn't know who Zeb is. So I feel like I want Hera to be the one, because I feel like she's the closest one to Thrawn. Who has a relationship with Thrawn. But yeah, I think maybe that is that's certainly a good point as well about someone who doesn't respect it all. And I don't know who that character would be at the moment. Maybe outside of Ezra, but even then, it's like we don't know what's happening with Ezra right now at the moment. We talked a little about the people around Thrawn in the books. Thrawn has some very interesting possible allies this time. He got Morgan Elsbeth, who some people are thinking he looks a little Dathomirian Night Sister Witch. We're seeing some green fire.
Yeah. Green fire.
We got Balin and Shin, these two mercenaries who are not Jedi and use orange lightsabers, who are looking for Thrawn.
Creamsicle, Joel. Creamsicle.
Goth Jedi are in today. I call them Goth Jedi.
Goth Jedi.
I love it, man. I'm all for it. I think what interests me though is when Balin said, if we find Thrawn, we're gonna find power beyond our imagination or something. And I'm like, what does a dark Jedi who uses the Force think Thrawn can give him that's powerful? And that kind of is what struck me the most. Like, did Thrawn find something when he got sent by the space whales? Did he find a Force MacGuffin? Is he going full on Indiana Jones villain? I don't mind that, honestly, because it's like playing to that sort of Thrawn likes that culture thing.
Well, I guess would that be worthy? Like a MacGuffin story, would that be worthy?
I just like I can't think of.
I'm tired of MacGuffin stories. So
it's like
a friend of mine.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, a friend of mine who's an archaeologist by training, has a lot of things to say about Thrawn as an anthropologist and how he's not a good one. So his downfall coming from bad anthropology / archaeology, I would also appreciate that.
I would totally actually. That's why I'm kind of pro MacGuffin story, only because I feel like imagine Thrawn finding like ancient Sith or Jedi artifacts and trying to be all anthropology about it, but like stinking at it. It's like,
and it just messes him up.
This thing fires a giant weapon or something. I can use this for my plans, or I don't know. It's like it just seems like something he would do.
That is interesting. Okay, I will say this. Thing about Indy, from what I know, is the villains, they fail because they fail to respect the power again beyond themselves. They try to compartmentalize and instrumentalize it to their own plans. That's the same thing that the Sith try to do with the Force itself. So maybe that's that is maybe the struggle that he gets. But I just hope he's smarter about it than them. That's the thing. The thing, maybe a bad anthropologist, but he's always been the tactician. He's always been the one. And so again, I maybe the thing I do keep coming back to is he will have some more of a confrontation with the Force and its reality, especially again in the Ahsoka show, that it's going to explore those deeper questions about existence and meaning and the wisdom that comes from the Force. The Force, more than just lifting rocks, it's how to actually seek balance and seek the flourishing of life. And the Force always pushes back. I mean, that's
Right.
maybe there's the closest connection is Darth Plagueis. We want to talk about Legends, right?
Yeah.
There'd be something there in terms of well, maybe even the power that the Balin is talking about could have to do with have something to do with immortality. We know, I mean, we know Gideon's been pursuing Plagueis level kind of things going on. You know, the precursors to Snoke. Maybe it has something to do with that. I don't know. I mean, we keep
I
on.
mean,
There's always a possibility out there
right.
in the world that Thrawn stumbles upon something. Not he. I don't think he himself cares about immortality for himself. I think he just cares about. We don't know. I mean, that's the thing. On screen, we don't actually know what he cares about. And Catherine, maybe you touched on this. We'll find out what he cares about and actually wants. Maybe it is to protect the Chiss ascendancy from the Grisk. I don't know. I doubt that, but it'd be wild if true. Maybe it
I
is. Yeah, maybe it is just his ability to. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a good, compelling villain. You know what they want. You know what they care about, and that's the thing with Thrawn is we haven't gotten there yet. We haven't in Rebels. We just never got there. Um, he's just the foil uh, for these rebels, and again, and that's I mean that's what Zahn is trying to backdate into with the Ascendancy trilogy, trying to protect the Chiss ascendancy. Again, how much is that going to count in on screen? We don't know, but yeah,
uh
again, I Catherine, I hear Deco what you're saying. Something worthy of him, but yeah, also uh, being confronted by a reality bigger than him that he isn't able to respect.
right. I mean, keep in mind, we probably won't have the conclusion to some of these story plots because obviously I think they're saving that for the movie. Which I
True,
think they will.
that is true.
Like I don't think Thrawn's going to lose at the end of the story. Then we're gonna wrap up the Thrawn story. Like I think
Mhm.
that's the vibe I get, and what Filoni said. It's like, yeah, this is Imperial Remnant versus the New Republic. So
Yeah.
that's about what he wants. So my guess is all that kind. I'm sure the siege will be set up in the show, but it's like the ultimate, Thrawn. My guess is Thrawn meets the Force, hitting the fan will come by that. But yeah, it is, I do wonder a lot
Yeah.
about
Well,
what is.
Catherine, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
To go through the Legends Vault. How often has Thrawn encountered? I mean, I guess an Outbound Flight and other stories. How often has Thrawn encountered Force users, encountered the Force, and how has that gone with him?
Yeah. Other than Outbound Flight,
Mhm.
there's an interesting interaction between him and Mara Jade,
Hmm.
where he wants to make sure it's actually her,
Right.
and asks her basically basically what were you wearing at this event that we like cross paths with each other,
Right.
as like the way to check that it's her. And it struck me that because she, it was not super clear at the time exactly what her role was within the Empire, to him anyways, but that he paid enough attention to her to be able to recall, that,
Mhm.
what type of ornament was on her shoulder or whatever. Um, it seems like he with Jorah Sabaoth, he has I'm not sure if I'd call it a respect, but he's aware that he's dangerous, and he thinks that he can control him even though he is dangerous, like that he is aware of the danger, which in some ways, makes him even more dangerous. Like if the kind of the thing of like, an experienced hiker might take more risks and get themselves stranded kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's he does seem to have respect. It's a good question because it really it's not super well defined. He respects the Force enough to, and this is something that I'm curious if it'll be brought into the Ahsoka show, is the Isel Amiri.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Because like that's, it's both, he understands that the Force is something that he should be worried about, but also it is kind of that overconfidence of thinking that bringing your pet lizard with you is going to, stop a Force user from causing chaos.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really curious about if we'll see the Isalamir or not.
Yeah, and I'll add, that's why I love the way Thrawn gets defeated in Rebels is twice. He lost to the Force twice. So, it's like, when he comes back, I think he's going to be like, I lost to something I don't truly understand. I need to understand this so I can control it and counter it. I think he's going to take that lesson. And maybe that is the thing. And, that's why, again, MacGuffin could be part of it. I don't know. I don't know what the story is, to be quite honest, but like Thrawn must now feel confident enough to come back and probably have some sort of counter to counteract the Force in some way, be it the Salamari, maybe something else, or maybe he found some things. I mean, I don't know. I only say he found things only because, like, he got sent to the unknown. He got sent to who knows where. He gotta have found something. Make him like
brought back a souvenir.
I will say,
I was sent to the unknown regions, and all I got was the stupid T-shirt.
That's great. I will say that is the only way I'll be okay with the Salamiri actually having any kind of effect, is if it's short-lived.
Yeah.
Who knows? Again, that is kind of the thing. As for his relationship, I remember with Sabaoth, it was very much like, oh, he's a crazy clone. Just be happy we don't have a full-on dark Jedi like Darth Vader with us. He's got the clone madness. I can handle this. He's just gonna let him rant. Doesn't matter. And I think he underestimated that to a certain extent. He's like,
yes.
Yep. So let me just kind of check here. I feel like I've covered a lot of it already. But I'm also, it's sort of I'll be curious to see where Tim Zahn goes. He's talked about how he sees everything as part of this one story. So my guess is Filoni will kind of handle the heir to the Empire part of it. And then, Tim Zahn might continue what he did last time with like, oh, and here's where all the other Chiss stuff was going on, and retroactively add stuff in.
Well, I don't think we're going to see Zahn write another Thrawn story. I think that's kind of done. But I mean, it'd be interesting to see him continue in this other pocket of lore that he's created that isn't very much Star. I mean, it's Star Wars its own way, but yeah, I mean, because there's some pretty interesting characters like Thalius. Give me a Thalius novel on her own. That'd be interesting.
Yeah,
I think that you're correct that we're not going to see Zahn write any more Thrawn until Filoni is well and done with Thrawn.
It'll be a bit,
yeah, it's going to be a hot minute, and it'll be interesting to see, like, because when Legends was decanonized and named as Legends, like the main reasoning for it that they gave us was that everything was going to be the same level of canon now, which is clearly not the case with the amount of like retconning that has happened, especially like with the Kanan comic and the Ahsoka novel. So it'll be interesting to see what is retconned in terms of Thrawn with the Ahsoka show, because I'm sure it'll be something. So yeah, we'll see how all those chips fall.
He's not actually a Chiss, he's a Duros.
Ha ha. No, I think it'll be something to do with Anakin. Potentially.
Oh, that is a good point. If there was one thing I would have loved to, I kind of do wish they'd see and be curious. It's like, oh yeah, that is, again, I don't want to turn this into Ahsoka speculation, but this is related to Thrawn.
I do, so that's
okay, well, we'll bring it here. what's Thrawn's relationship with Ahsoka gonna be like? He's never met her. Like he's never met her. Like ooh. You know, he knows Hera, he knows Ezra, he knows of Sabine. I don't think the two ever met.
He knows that Anakin is Vader.
You know, the Anakin is Vader, and
sorry, I'm just spoiling alliances left, right, and center here. But
that's some good psychological.
Read it anyway. You guys should all read it anyway. But so good.
So yeah, I kind of hope that that's something they actually do.
We don't know for sure.
Yeah.
At least on screen.
He might not know that Anakin is Vader.
True. That might be the thing they retcon. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's something I hope they keep though, because like that would be some good psychological drama to
because Balin's got to suspect. I don't know. I mean, Balin bringing that up with Ahsoka. I mean, trying to get under her skin.
What struck me with that, with Balin and Ahsoka, that line in particular, reminded me so much, especially the delivery of it, of Dooku when Obi-Wan's in his little spinning prison.
Qui-Gon spoke very highly of you.
Yeah, like he says pretty much the exact same thing. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the relationship between Anakin and Balin was back in the day, assuming that Balin was a Jedi at one point. That's the assumption that I'm making.
He is. He's a survivor. He's a survivor. And then they probably are. Balin and Anakin had to be around the same age. Maybe Balin's a little older. But certainly they knew of each other. It's sort of interesting. I'm just thinking about the Ahsoka series now as I continue to think about it. And obviously Thrawn's the big bad. He is the boss. If for video game reference, he is the big boss. But it's something I've always brought up about Thrawn. He's not a very personable villain. I mean, by a personable villain,
you saw us getting it before too, right?
He is. And not necessarily in terms of like personality. I just mean like Luke and Vader were arch enemies because the father-son dynamic. Rey and Kylo were equals. Obi-Wan and Maul got their whole thing. What is it? Like Ahsoka, during the Heir of the Empire, Luke wasn't going, Thrawn, my arch enemy. Yeah. And then Luke, Thrawn and Luke would go at it. It's like, Luke never met Thrawn the whole book. He was busy dealing with Mara Jade and Sabayos, who wanted, an apprentice. Thrawn was just kind of like, just setting up his pieces for things to go here, you go there, and then everyone kind of had to react to it. Even in the series right now, it looks like, Ahsoka's going to deal more with Balin and, and Sabine, is going to fight Shin at least twice. So, we kind of have that kind of personable villain. So, I do wonder if Thrawn's even going to really interact with our heroes or just be kind of more like ordering the minions to do the hard work while he's kind of prepping for the macro campaign, while the more interpersonal stuff is more with is there going to be a moment where Sabine and Ahsoka are with Thrawn and Ahsoka's going to go straight for him, and then Thrawn manages to parry or punch or just duck. I am curious because again, Thrawn, and I'm sure Katherine, you probably seen it. Thrawn's not much of that kind of personal villain the same way. Even the Emperor, who even is more of a macro level, kind of had like the Emperor at least had interactions with Luke. Thrawn never meets our heroes at all, except for maybe like Mara Jade once.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's what does he care about? What does he want? I really hope, at least, but also, Joel, what you were saying before about how, the big thing for him is the film, the big story. So this is getting a lot of the buzz for him, but he might be in the one scene at the end, or who knows what. Probably not the end, because we already seen him in the trailer. But yeah, that's he's not going to be a major. I mean, I think I'm falling into the trap too, but I think he's going to be a major presence in the show. He might be a major presence, but not have a lot of screen time. I mean, he's kind of a presence ever since the name drop. So in The Mandalorian, but and even in the Shadow Council, he was a presence, even though he wasn't there. It's going to be a presence of our own expectations, our own anticipations of what he can bring, knowing what we know already. Yeah, I guess my own caution to myself is to not get too ahead of myself in what in how much screen time he gets. I mean, like Vader only was what 10 minutes in A New Hope, and he does have such a
Left an
presence in that
impression.
film. Yeah, that's an impression. So, well, yeah, we'll see. It'd be interesting. I doubt they're gonna overuse him. But he needs to have a lot of screen time in the film. Then,
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, Wrath of Khan, through Star Trek, there's the old Wrath of Khan thing of like him and Kirk only talk to each other once or twice.
sure,
He's
but
not in that. There's a lot of
Khan
presence. So
himself has a lot going on, a lot to
that's
do, and a
true.
lot to say. So,
True. Yeah, but
yeah.
I mean, he definitely got to have that presence. It's like everything that's happening is because of Thrawn.
Mhm.
Yeah, but um, you know, as we kind of wrap things up,
Mhm.
I guess I'll kind of ask the question where I started. Katherine, what did you ever expect this? Did you ever suspect Thrawn, a character from a 1991 tie-in novel, who aimed at kind of the hardcore fandom of Star Wars, would ever make such a leap to be the major antagonist of a Disney Plus series and possibly a movie in the 21st century? Like, is this blowing your mind? Is your mind being somewhat blown?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's nothing what we ever would have expected. And I think part of that is just that, in 1991 and even through the early 2000s, the entire concept of a streaming service is just like
True.
completely unreasonable. Like the idea of having this many Star Wars shows is crazy. Because the entire world of media has changed with streaming services, and
Mhm.
I think it's good that they are pulling on the highlights of what came before. So we shall see.
Yeah, and one more thing, one more thing. I wanted to do this. I'm going to do this. We talked about Thrawn motivations and whatnot, from the books to the films, and I think in Rebels, if you want to kind of get to where I think Thrawn's motivations are, what his whole thing is, there's a scene in the final season of Rebels. A little too kind of weird. Like last scene, you kind of now get the villain motivation. Okay, but written by Filoni himself, and it's a scene where Ezra takes himself to Thrawn on the Chimera, and I have the scene written down. So you're gonna get yourself a Joel Davis performance.
Here
So
we go.
Thrawn walks in. So Ezra walks in. Thrawn's waiting at the desk. Here's where Thrawn, and you can tell. I'm gonna do the voices. It was a wise decision for you to surrender. I didn't have much of a choice. Nonsense. You could have chose to let your people die. However, you chose to be a Jedi. Predictable. You follow a long history written by the Jedi where they choose what they believe to be morally correct instead of what is strategically sound. And yet the Jedi have survived. The Jedi once numbered in the thousands. What's left are scattered, frightened lot, mostly beaten and in hiding, or poorly trained children like yourself. I must admit, the mysteries of the Force are an enigma to me. But for all those possibilities, all the power, the Jedi lacked the vision for how to wield it. The Force isn't a weapon, but you'll never understand that. I don't have to. It was not my intention to utterly destroy Lothal, but that is inevitable now. These are the few artifacts I've gathered from your homeworld. I say that I could. I've even taken some of Sabine Wren's work. She's quite talented, or was quite talented. You think you can take whatever you want? Things you didn't make? Didn't earn? Things you don't even understand? You don't deserve to have that art or Lothal. Who deserves what is irrelevant. What matters is who has power. But that is something the Jedi won't teach you, so I'll take you to someone who will. And then he meets the Emperor. And that to me, that whole scene, in my mind at least, and maybe it's more Filoni's Thrawn, but that to me just sums up the character right then and there, just beautifully. It's one of my favorite scenes in all of Rebels. And Matthew, I'll throw it to you. Just reading that scene and probably regurgitating your memory, what does that say to you about Thrawn, especially Filoni's take on the character in particular, because he's the one who wrote it?
You take two things. The dark side of Nietzsche's will to power. It doesn't matter who deserves it. Doesn't matter. The Jedi choose what they believe to be morally correct instead of what is strategically sound, and to how Thrawn, maybe this is it. He represents the reduction of politics of military. Well, military is already a reduction of it, but of life to these rational economic actors who just play a game on a board as opposed to, what we're getting at before. People who are meant to have wisdom and uh, sensitivity to the implications of their choices on others and of themselves, and discern to figure out, try to think about what is the flourishing of life. And so that maybe that's hopefully what gets explored more deeply in this. One thing, another thing that comes to mind then is the foil to the counter to that. Katherine, is amazing. You referenced Dooku and Obi-Wan, talking about Qui-Gon. To me, Ahsoka is the second coming of Qui-Gon in so many ways. Just this pure servant of the light who isn't concerned about even the history of the Order. Well, she's concerned about it, but she leaves the Order in order to more deeply follow the light. And I go back to what I quoted, I think it was last week or a few weeks ago, Qui-Gon in Master and Apprentice. We don't have this play this cosmic game. We're not Jedi because we think it's going to be the winning side. We're Jedi because we don't serve the light because we think it's going to be the winning side. We serve the light because it's the light. We choose what we believe to be morally correct, and even if we lose, we still end up winning because we live rightly, and the implications of our choices are going to live on beyond us, and then hopefully become Force ghosts. So, that's it's a beautiful way for a villain to spur on questions of what is right by exploring what is wrong. And
Catherine, I'll toss it to you with that line, that final scene from Rebels. I don't know how much you remember that moment, but how did you think that kind of captured the character of Thrawn, at least from what Filoni's tried to go for? Although I think it can even match up with his original Heir to the Empire representation back then as well.
Yeah. So watching that, I was still emotionally devastated about Canon. So it didn't.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. But I think, I think that underestimating will always be what gets Thrawn. And Ezra's saying some of the things that, some of the same things I've heard from my friend about you're a bad anthropologist. So yeah, I think it is really a highlight of the character in his failures.
He isn't able to make a thick description, if I'm using that term correctly, of what the Jedi were and of what Twi'leks are and what Mandalorian and Lothal.
It's so good because he's holding like the Jedi Temple Guard helmet, like Shakespeare.
He makes a thin description. He just what he sees on the surface, and isn't able to enter the worldview, the world of the people he's studying, and that's it's my sense of what a good anthropologist, a good historian does, is at least able to be sympathetic. You don't actually have to assent to it yourself. In some contexts, it helps to know. I mean, I think about church history. It helps to at least. It helps become even better. You at least have to know what people cared about, what people believed in, and understand it. But that's that whole thick description versus thin description.
I'll add one more thing, and kind of as a speculation for Ahsoka / just kind of thinking about Thrawn's goals. One of my favorite things about villains are villains who learn lessons but they're the wrong thing to take away.
Like Bob Iger with Solo, right?
Something like that. But Solo's not a good movie. That's my shots fired.
Wow.
I don't like Solo. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so funny enough, I feel like in episode 9 with Palpatine was trying to do a reverse Vader, where he's like, I'm your family, so you gotta be loyal to me, Rey, because we got the blood. You're my kid, so I totally learned my lesson for what I learned from Vader, and clearly that backfires. I love it when I'm curious, kind of what lesson Thrawn would learn from his defeats, thinking I'm so smart, I gotta learn from this failure, but obviously take the wrong approach to it, or just the wrong lesson from it as well. Like, it's like maybe that's why he wants Balon and Shin to sort of like, and Morgan Elsbeth if he has magic too, sort of like, well, I didn't have Force users on my team when I was fighting with Ezra, so now I have to have Force users on my team. That's clearly how this is going to work.
Yeah.
It's not just necessarily Force MacGuffin, but also just I got to have the things that
the shiny
Ezra
tools.
had, so I can win this time, and obviously that didn't work. But yeah, I'm very curious to see where that all goes. But I think with that, we'll call that a discussion, everybody. Katherine, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your Legends perspectives about it. Your perspective on anthropology, or your friend's perspective on anthropology. And just I can't wait to see where this all goes. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll continue with the outro there. First of all, I think before I do that, Katherine, do you have any final thoughts on the whole conversation? Thoughts. What do you love about Thrawn? What do you hope for with Thrawn?
Yeah, forward? I mean, I hope for Thrawn in the Ahsoka show to be what I love about Thrawn in the original Thrawn trilogy, of that he makes the protagonists work harder. He really brings out the best in them by being the worst. So yeah, that's my final thought.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds good. And yeah, as Jill said, this is a good time to wrap things up. And thanks for everyone for joining us in the comments as well. Let us know what you thought of our conversation tonight down also in the comments. Not going anywhere. On all the socials, on Underworld YouTube, Underworld Facebook, Underworld Twitter, Iron Canon Twitter, Iron Canon Twitch. Check us out there. And then do please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Ion Canon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. Katherine, yet again, thanks so much for coming on, sharing your thoughts and your wealth of knowledge about Legends, and also insights about Canon, wealth of knowledge about Canon as well, and Thrawn generally. I mean, one of the looming big figures. Thanks again for coming on. Where can they find you on the internet? And again, tell us more about Legends Con.
Yeah, so I am on Twitter as Martian_Mara, but I don't post there a lot. So really follow Legends Con. On Twitter and Instagram, we are Legends_Con, and on Facebook and Tumblr, we are at Legends Consortium. We've got some exciting new guest announcements that we'll be posting soon. Other big things that are happening soon. We're almost to our deadline for vendors. So if you are able to make it to the convention and you want to either sell your art, crafts, Star Wars books, etc., or if you want to promote your Star Wars podcast, fan film, Facebook group, Discord group, definitely check us out. August 1st is the deadline, so get on that soon.
And where and when is the convention again?
Yes, so the convention will be at the Marriott Convention Center in Burbank, California. It is right next to the Burbank Airport. It'll be super convenient. You don't have to go through LAX. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Top guests are Randy Stradley of Dark Horse Comics and Matthew Stover of the amazing Revenge of the Sith novelization, as well as Shatterpoint and several other books. And we have many other authors as well, and still more guest announcements coming. So definitely check us out if you like Legends.
That's awesome. And you were talking about selling your art, and I'm like, I felt you should say Sell your art so Thrawn can analyze it and study your
Yes.
Yes.
tactics.
Thrawn can think that he knows what's going on from it. Yeah.
That's so great. I'm so happy this is really taken off. Yeah, again, especially for the positivity as well as celebrating these stories that are still wonderful or are so wonderful and very much with us. Joel, where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at Ion Cannon Pod. Again, Ion Cannon Pod on Twitter. You can also find us on Threads. A little less so. It's hard still going back and forth for convenience sake. But I'm on, and of course, you can always find me at GID 2012 on Twitter, 2021 on Twitter, and of course on Star Wars Underworld Discord, where we'll be having a game night hopefully this Friday.
And you can still find me on Twitter at NEUG45, mostly complaining about Toronto FC and soccer. But you can find me on Instagram and Threads at MNEUG1138. And of course, at Iron Cannon Pod, EYEON, CANON on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. All the above. Joel, Catherine, this has been great. Let's blow this thing and head home.